syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Charles.
Well, the numbers are rather tricky because when you get a drop in the rate and then you get this anemic increase in the number of new jobs, they contradict each other. And the reason that you can have these contradictions is because each of them comes from a completely different survey. The anemic rise in new jobs comes from the survey of employers, and it's a huge and vast survey where 1 out of every 3 employers is questioned. Whereas the unemployment rate comes from the survey of households, where it's only 0.6% of all households are being surveyed. So you've got a very small sample. It doesn't mean that one is right and the other is wrong, but it means that in the second one, where you have this very small sample, you can have huge fluctuations. The answer is we don't know which is right, except for one thing. Often the Goolsbee, who was the president's own economist, that said the only number in the end that you can rely on is the growth of GDP in the economy. And that's 1.3%, a rate at which everybody agrees you can only get unemployment stagnant or rising. So at this rate of growth, which is less this year than it was last year, less last year than the year before, we are headed for higher unemployment despite the fluctuation that we saw today. Except that it helps the president nonetheless, because there'll be so many people who go out and vote in October before the last numbers will come out. But let me just say, this, if anything, it's a sampling error and will be ended up being corrected over time in the next month or two. But I don't believe, as some on the right are suggesting, it's a conspiracy. I think people ought to stay away from any conspiracies, particularly here, because the BLS is a fairly reliable and insulated agency.
And Graham and Senator McCain sent a letter today saying, among the other things, this: despite the administration's guidance not to issue WARN notices now. The WARN Act is the law that sends that you have to required to send out the notices. It's our fear that should you rely on that guidance and fail to comply with the WARN Act requirements, you will be setting your company up for serious legal and financial repercussions. The Congress should not put the taxpayers on the hook if a private company fails to follow the law. That letter went out to Lockheed Martin, which is reportedly considering serious layoffs. Charles.
Lindsay is exactly right. It's another example of administration lawlessness. For example, in the DREAM Act, which is telling the ICE, the Immigration Department, not to enforce a large area of immigration law, that was an amendment that was rejected explicitly by the Congress. Doing it again here, and this is lawlessness squared. They're saying not only should you break the law, but if you're sued, we're going to use the money that we get in taxes as a way to protect you in the lawsuit. This is, you know, the executive's obligation is to execute the laws, and they're doing exactly the opposite with obvious impunity.
Chuck.
Mitt Romney's giving a big foreign policy speech next week. What should he say?
Monday at VMI.
Connect the dots. There's been an explosion of anti-Americanism in half the world. The administration pretends it's about a video. You have to make the case that this is the reaction to the new radical policy Obama announced in Cairo of accommodation and appeasement with the Muslim world. And the facts are not just that we aren't loved, which was the intention, but we are not respected, in fact despised in large areas of the world. You both have stumbled on the truth. It is the debate. And it's the first in 62 years in which one guy won decisively without a moment, either a gaffe or a zinger, and that makes it unique.